You ever hear something in the woods that makes your blood run cold? That gnawing feeling at the back of your mind that something isn't right, but you can't put your finger on it? It's one thing to hear the typical forest sounds, twigs breaking, branches swaying, leaves rustling, but it's a whole different level when you hear something deliberately moving through the woods, something that's not supposed to be there. That's exactly what happened to me and my buddy Tyler one night deep in the Sierra Nevadas. It was supposed to be a fun 3-day backpacking trip, just two friends out in nature, far from the chaos of civilization, reconnecting with the wilderness. But that night everything changed. It was the second night of our trip. We had hiked in from the nearest trailhead, miles away from the nearest road, with nothing but the sound of rushing streams and the wind in the trees around us. We set up camp beside a glacial lake, its surface reflecting the moonlight like glass. There was no one else around, just us, the fire, and the stars overhead. As the fire flickered low, casting long shadows around our campsite, we started talking about life, the outdoors, anything and everything. The kind of deep philosophical talks you have when there's no one around to interrupt and the world seems distant and far away. We were just enjoying the peace, you know? Then, in the middle of one of those conversations, I heard it. A snap, a sharp crack of a twig breaking underfoot. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a bird or a raccoon. Those are common sounds out here. No, this was something different. Slow, deliberate, like it was trying to be heard. I glanced at Tyler. He was already looking at me. We didn't have to say a word. He grabbed the flashlight, his fingers trembling slightly, and pointed it toward the trees. The beam cut through the darkness, searching, probing the shadows. The light bounced off the trees, revealing the deep shadows between them. For a moment, nothing seemed out of place. But then, there, just beyond the edge of the beam, I saw something. Something low to the ground, hunched and crouched. At first, I thought it might be an animal, maybe a bear or a deer, something that had wandered close to our camp. But the way it moved wasn't natural. It wasn't an animal. It was too deliberate, too calculated. And then there were the eyes, reflective, like twin pools of liquid silver staring right at us. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I swear my heart stopped for a second. My blood turned to ice. Tyler must have seen it too, because he gasped, barely able to whisper, "What the hell is that?" Before either of us could react, it was gone, just like that. Disappeared back into the darkness. No sound, no movement. It was like it had never been there at all. We stood there for what felt like hours, our eyes locked on the dark tree line, waiting for it to move again, but nothing came. The forest around us was dead silent. I mean, not a single bird or animal was making a sound. Nothing. Just the wind rustling the leaves and the soft crackle of the fire. But even that wasn't enough to calm the growing panic inside me. I could feel the sweat on the back of my neck, my hands clammy. "It's probably just a deer," I muttered, trying to reassure myself, trying to explain it away. But I knew that wasn't true. Not with those eyes, not with the way it moved. That wasn't a deer, and it certainly wasn't anything I wanted to meet again. After that, things went quiet, too quiet. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Tyler and I exchanged nervous glances. We didn't speak, but we both knew that whatever that thing was, it hadn't left. It was still out there, watching us. We tried to pretend it was nothing. We joked a little, trying to shake off the fear, but the tension was thick. I kept scanning the trees, hoping to see something that would explain what we just witnessed, but the shadows seemed deeper, more impenetrable, the longer we sat there. And then that sound, that low, guttural exhale. It wasn't a wind, it wasn't an animal. It came from somewhere close, too close. I held my breath, straining to hear, and there it was again. A soft exhale, almost like a growl, but not quite. more like something trying to breathe without making a sound. Something that had been lying in wait for a long time. My pulse quickened. I could feel Tyler's eyes on me, but I couldn't bring myself to look at him. I just stared into the darkness. And that's when I realized it was circling us, moving around the perimeter of our camp. Every so often, the shadows would shift as it moved, but it never got close enough for us to see. The fire flickered and sputtered, casting strange, dancing shadows across the ground, but it never crossed into the circle of light. It stayed out there, just beyond the fire's reach. That night felt like it would never end. Tyler and I stayed wide awake, every nerve on edge, listening to every rustle, every crackle of the fire. We were so tired, but there was no way we could sleep. Every time we closed our eyes, we saw those reflective eyes staring back at us. Every breath of wind seemed like it might be the thing getting closer. Every crack of a branch sent us into a panic. I don't know how long we sat there, stiff and terrified, staring into the dark, waiting for the sound to come again, or for something to emerge from the trees. But it never did, not right away. Instead, it was like the thing was playing with us. We could feel it out there, just beyond the firelight, circling, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to get closer. I looked at Tyler, and I could tell he was just as terrified as I was. But there was nothing we could do. If it came for us, we were on our own. No one was going to help us out here in the wilderness. It was just us, the fire, and whatever was out there in the dark. The night dragged on, but somehow we made it through. When the first light of dawn broke through the trees, it felt like a miracle. We were both exhausted, both relieved, and still scared. I don't think either of us spoke a word for the first few minutes as we packed up our gear. There was no sign of what had been out there, no movement, no sounds, just the quiet of the morning, the soft murmur of the wind through the trees. But when we started looking around the campsite, that's when we saw it. Footprints, huge ones, barefoot tracks with toes splayed wide like something had been walking around our tent in the middle of the night. The prints were deep, as if something heavy had been standing there, circling us. But here's the thing. Those tracks, they didn't lead anywhere. They just appeared surrounding the tent in a perfect circle, and then they stopped. Like whatever had been there had vanished into thin air. We stood there for a long time, just staring at the prints, trying to make sense of it. But no matter how hard we looked, we couldn't explain it. No sign of where it had gone. No trail leading into the woods. Nothing. It was like it had been there, and then, just as quickly, disappeared. We didn't talk much after that. We were both shaken, and I think we were both afraid to say the things we were thinking. Was it a bear? A man? Something else? We didn't know. And maybe it's better that way. I'll never be able to explain what we saw or what happened that night. I don't know if it was something that had been watching us for days or if it was a one-time thing, just a freak occurrence. But whatever it was, I know one thing for sure. It was watching us. And it could have come closer. It could have, but it didn't. Maybe it's still out there, waiting. If you ever find yourself out there, deep in the woods at night, far from the nearest road or trailhead, remember this. Don't let the stillness fool you. Don't think the shadows are your friends, because somewhere, just beyond the edge of the firelight, something might be waiting for you. And if you ever feel like you're being watched, trust me, you are. Have you ever had one of those dreams where you're the only person left in the world? Where everything looks normal, everything's there, but something's wrong, something is missing. Now imagine waking up in a place that just hours before had been alive with sound and laughter and finding it completely silent. Not just quiet, empty. In 1999, I took a solo camping trip to a remote state park in Vermont. I thought I was getting away from the world for a few days of solitude and peace. But I think I found something else. Something older than the forest. Something that doesn't want to be seen. And I still don't know why it let me go. It was July, peak summer break. As a school teacher, I treasured those quiet weeks between semesters. I didn't want beaches or busy hotels. I wanted quiet, solitude. So I picked this lesser-known state park in Vermont. Miles of forest trails, a tiny lake, and just 12 campsites. When I arrived late that afternoon, around 5, the air was still thick with that warm, golden summer light. There were only 3 other sites in use. A family with 2 kids was roasting marshmallows a few sites down. I remember the laughter, their dog chasing the youngest around a picnic table. Closer to me, a couple sat beside their fire, holding hands, sipping something from enamel mugs. The third was an older man in his 60s, sitting alone and smiling quietly as he read a paperback. He nodded when I passed and said, "Nice night for it." I smiled back and said, "Sure is." Everything about it felt safe, familiar, but sometimes familiarity can be deceiving. As night fell, the campground slowly quieted. I cooked some quick pasta on my portable stove, cleaned up, and sat by the fire. The sound of soft laughter, the crackle of fires, even a bit of someone's radio playing a folk song floated through the trees. It was the kind of evening that makes you feel small, but in a comforting way, like the world was tucking you in. But then, as the fire died and I zipped myself into my tent, I heard something odd. Not loud, not alarming, just off. A rhythmic humming, soft, far away. I thought maybe it was the couple playing music again or someone humming to help a child sleep. But it didn't sound like a lullaby. It sounded ancient and not meant for anyone else to hear. I woke up early. I always do when I camp. 6 a.m. But this time, the second I opened my eyes, I knew something was wrong. The forest was dead silent. Not a single bird chirped. No rustling, no insects, just a suffocating, heavy stillness. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. At first glance, everything looked normal. But then I looked closer. No one. No sounds, no cooking fires, no kids, no dog barking. I walked to the family's site. Their gear was still there, sleeping bags, toys, even a half-finished breakfast. But no people. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing. I tried the couple's tent. It was zipped shut, neat, but I could feel it. It was empty. Not abandoned in panic, more like they had just vanished. I walked to every single site. I checked the lake trail, the restrooms, the small wooden amphitheater nearby. Not a soul. It was like I had fallen asleep in one world and woken up in another. The oddest part? There were no cars. The gravel lot where I'd parked, my little red Honda, was the only vehicle. I hadn't heard anyone leave. No engines. No headlights through my tent. How could 3 groups leave in the middle of the night without making a single sound? I followed the sign pointing to the ranger station, about a mile down a narrow dirt path. It was a small log cabin-style building, locked tight, but through the dusty front window, I saw the permits. All 3 groups had checked in. None of them had signed out. I stared at the names, the dates, my hand pressed against the glass. Then I felt it, a pressure, like someone was watching. I turned. The woods were still, but something was wrong with the shadows between the trees. They looked too deep, too dense, like something could be standing inside them, just beyond the light. I sprinted back to the campground. I was panicking now. I grabbed my keys and pack, barely zipped my tent shut. I headed for the parking lot. Empty. Every single car gone, except mine. I stood there, heart racing, trying to breathe. I looked down, no tire tracks, no footprints in the soft dirt, nothing to suggest anyone had ever been there. I should have left, but my battery had died. I'd left the dome light on. I had no signal, no one to call. I made a fire and waited. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat by the flames, listening. Around midnight, it began again. The whispering, dozens of voices, low, raspy, ancient. They weren't speaking English. They weren't speaking anything. It felt like they were speaking directly to my bones. I aimed my flashlight into the trees. Nothing, but I knew. I knew I was being watched. At first light, I tried the car again. The engine sputtered, then turned over. I didn't look back as I drove out of the park. I made it home, shaking, exhausted. 2 days later, I went to the ranger office in town. They said no one had signed out. No missing persons reports. The names I saw, they didn't match any of their records, as if those people never existed. But I have one photo, a shot I took when I arrived, and in the far corner of that picture, someone is standing, half hidden in the trees. I never saw them in person, but they saw me. Some say there are places in this world where reality is thin, where something else seeps through, something that doesn't belong. Maybe that campground was one of those places. Maybe those people vanished into it. Maybe I was never meant to see it, but I did. And I left. And sometimes, late at night when the world goes quiet, I hear the humming again, and I wonder if something followed me back. If you like these horror stories, please like and share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more true scary stories. Have you ever heard your name whispered in total darkness? Not shouted, not called, just whispered. Not by someone you know, not by someone you can see, but by something you feel right behind you. That happened to me. My name is Marcos. I'm 30 years old, a landscape photographer who spends more time in the wild than in civilization. In 2016, I went to Canyonlands National Park in Utah to photograph the stars. No light pollution, no people. Just open sky and timeless desert. It was supposed to be a peaceful, silent night under the stars. But what I heard, what I felt out there, I still hear it in my dreams. And I wasn't supposed to be found. No one knew where I was. I hadn't told anyone. I was completely alone, or so I thought. I arrived in Canyonlands late in the afternoon. The drive from Moab was long and winding, the landscape changing from red mesas to towering buttes and endless rock valleys. I had a spot in mind, a remote overlook I'd seen in online forums. No designated trail, just GPS coordinates and a warning that it was isolated. Perfect. I pulled off the dirt road, parked my Jeep, slung my camera gear on my back, and started hiking. About 2 miles in, I found it, a flat rock ledge facing west, with a wide open view of the canyon. The silence was profound. It wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. The kind of silence that makes you question if your ears are still working. I pitched my tent right there. No other campers, no sounds. Just me, my camera, and miles of empty desert. By nightfall, I was in my element. The sky was unbelievable, like a blanket of fireflies. The Milky Way stretched from one horizon to the other, like a galactic river. I set up my tripod and started shooting long exposures. 30-second frames to catch the light trails and starlight. My camera clicked quietly, capturing beauty I couldn't even see with my naked eye. Then I heard it. So faint, so soft, I thought I imagined it. Just one word. My name. Marcos. It sounded like it came from far away, like someone exhaling into the wind. My heart paused. I turned off the shutter, looked around. Nothing. Just the dark. I laughed it off. Must have been the wind. Or maybe I was so locked into focus I imagined it. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. The silence had changed. The air felt thicker somehow, heavier. Even the sky seemed darker. I went back to shooting, forcing myself to breathe, trying to recapture the magic of the moment. But that whisper, it kept echoing in my head. Maybe 15 minutes passed, then I heard it again. But this time it was closer. Not drifting, not distant. Right behind me, Marcos. It was no longer a whisper. It was deliberate, soft, yes, but intentional, and full of something I can't describe. Curiosity? Hunger? I spun around so hard I knocked over my tripod. The desert was empty. but I swear the rocks, those ancient stone formations, they looked like they were leaning closer. Watching. My chest was tight. I wasn't scared. I was terrified. I packed my gear in minutes, fumbling, sweating. I kept shining my flashlight behind me, half expecting to see. I don't even know, but I never saw anything. That made it worse. I started walking back to my tent, fast. The trail was dim. My flashlight flickered once, just once. Every step felt like something was gaining on me, like I was being herded. I was maybe 20 feet from my tent when I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't whispered, it was right in my ear. Marcos. Loud, clear, sharp. I screamed, spun around. Nothing. Just night. Just windless, empty night. I stumbled backward into my tent, zipped it shut, and sat there in the dark, heart pounding like it was trying to tear through my chest. That night was the longest of my life. I kept the flashlight on until the batteries died. My knife sat in my hand the entire time. There were no footsteps, no sounds, not even wind, just a wall of silence, a suffocating, unnatural quiet. I didn't sleep, not for a second. And then the worst part came at dawn. The first thing I noticed when I unzipped the tent was the dew. Everything was soaked. Then I saw the handprints, dozens of them, tiny, perfect, pressed all over the outside of my tent, front, back, sides. Each print looked like it belonged to a small child, but I was miles from any family campsite. There were no footprints, no tire tracks, nothing, just those hands, like they'd watched me, touched me, surrounded me. I counted at least 37. I didn't pack carefully. I shoved everything into the Jeep and drove out like I was being chased. I didn't stop, not for food, not for water. Not until I reached a motel in Moab, where I locked the door, closed the blinds, and sat on the bed shaking. I checked every photo I'd taken. They were beautiful. But in 3 of them, deep in the shadows, I saw faces. Not clear, not human. Just impressions of something, watching. I haven't camped alone since that trip. I still take photos, but never in total darkness, never without someone nearby. Sometimes at night, just before sleep takes me, I hear it. Faint, delicate, just under the static of silence. Marcos, like it followed me home. If you ever visit Canyonlands, go during the day. Take your photos, take in the silence. But if you hear your name whispered out there, don't turn around, don't answer. And for the love of God, don't camp alone. Because something in that valley knows your name.